Russia, late 2000s, as neo-Nazi skinheads roamed the streets attacking migrants and activists, a brutal underground war erupted. In the heart of it stood Sokrat Sutuga, a hardcore Antifa militant known for throwing fists, not slogans. This is the story of blighted knuckles, street battles, and uncompromising resistance. Alexey Sutuga was born in Irkuts on 24th of January. He became an anarchist while still in school and was an anti-fascist. He founded an anti-fascist fan group for the football club Zvezda and participated in various civic and environmental initiatives. He was one of the founding members of the anarchist organization Autonomous Action, first in Irkutsk, then in Moscow, where he later moved. The nickname Sokrat stuck with Sutuga in the early 2000s. Alexei read a lot and at one point became fascinated with Socrates, quoting him constantly. People began saying, "Oh, he's smart like Socrates," and the name stuck. He was very well read and studied ancient Greek philosophy. Sokrat was one of the first Russian Rush skinheads, which stood for Red and Anarchist Skinheads, who hold anti-fascist and leftist views. The acronym RUSH appeared in his Instagram handle, and the profile picture displayed the Rush logo, a circle with three red arrows symbolizing freedom, equality, and solidarity. He gained some notoriety during a violent attack by far-right thugs armed with metal rods on an eco-activist tent camp near Angarsk. The camp had been set up to protest the construction of a uranium enrichment plant. During the nighttime beating, Sutuga's anti-fascist friend Ilya Borodyanenko was killed in his sleep. 7 people, including Socrates, were seriously injured. The level of violence from the far right in Russia during the 2000s was high. Street violence in Moscow was a serious issue. Any rally, protest, or concert carried the threat that someone would show up. We had to patrol the area, and if someone did show up, we had to respond. Tall, strong, and a straight edger, Socrates was often among those defending anti-fascist and punk events from attacks by right-wing radicals. What began as a self-defense evolved into a proactive attacks on far-right concerts. In early 2000s, Nazis attacked anti-fascist events, and we had to defend ourselves. But by 2006 to 2007, the Nazis became afraid to hold open concerts because they knew anti-fascists would show up and attack them. They stopped advertising locations. Sokrat admitted they began to enjoy raiding these shows. Whenever they announced a concert with dozens of Nazi bands, we would wait for people to start arriving and then rush in and scatter them before the cops came. The cops would show up to find a bunch of beaten Nazis and a ruined concert. We'd be very happy. He also engaged in preventive conversations with young boneheads, often ending with a smack to the head. Many of them dropped out of the scene before committing serious crimes. Alexei was frequently detained during protests. He worked as a laborer on construction sites and other physically demanding jobs. In his free time, he sang in the punk band Working Boys. For several years, he was part of a group led by Ivan Kostelom Hutorskoy, helping to secure anti-fascist events and organize mixed martial arts tournaments under anti-racist slogans. Alexei was visiting Ukraine, where his son Nesta, named after Nesta Makhno, was born to him and his activist wife. In 2007, he was arrested in Kyiv while planning to take part in a protest against a far-right march. During surveillance of anti-fascists, an SBU officer was assaulted. Sokrat spent several days in detention, was tortured, but avoided criminal charges because the officer withdrew his complaint. In the early 2000s, anti-fascism in Russia was a grassroots self-organization. People began protecting punk rockers, African students, and Caucasian vendors at markets. Eventually, Nazis realized that the real threat wasn't minorities, but anti-fascists. This led to many murders of Vanya Kostelom, Fedya Filatov, Stanislav Markelov, and others. Street violence in the 2000s was ultra-violent: knives, brass knuckles, traumatic pistols. 10 years ago, it was impossible to fight it without force. At that time, it was the only way to stop the violence. Until 2007, the police saw Nazis and anti-fascists as two rival gangs fighting for the turf. That changed in 2008 when Putin created the Center E Extremism Division in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. After that, police learned to distinguish tattoos and symbols and began prosecuting both sides. As one activist put it, neither the Nazis nor the anti fascists won, only the cops did. They jailed everyone. Alexey Sutuga was prosecuted twice, both times for fights. The first case involved a brawl at the Vozdukh nightclub in late 2011, during which someone opened fire with a traumatic gun. Several were injured. Among the accused were Alex Sutuga, Alexey Alesinov, and two others. They were charged with hooliganism and battery, but club security claimed that nationalists started it. In early 2014, they were granted amnesty and the case was closed. 3 months later, Sutuga was arrested again after a fight with neo-Nazis at a Sbarro cafe near Oktyabrskaya metro station. His prison mates recall his strength and how easily he could bench 90 kilograms in a prison gym. In September 2014, the Zamoskvoretsky court sentenced him to 3 years and 1 month in a penal colony for hooliganism and beating Nazis. He served time in a high security colony, number 2 in Angarsk, Irkutsk region, known for its harsh conditions. He was frequently placed in solitary confinement. When released, he was visibly emaciated and no longer a straight edger. He began drinking. Many who serve time feel they've lost years, said a friend. Sokrat had it even tougher. When he got out, he wanted to make up for lost time. He was restless, and he struggled to understand how the world and the movement had changed. By his release, the anti-fascist scene had evolved. People had families, new priorities, new members joined. The issues that once seemed urgent were no longer. The leftist scene became more part of the general opposition. Sokrat kept showing up to events, organizing things, going to concerts and hangouts. It looked like he was trying to live the life that was stolen from him in prison, but he had trouble adjusting to the new reality, finding new meaning after years of activism. Street violence had decreased, but he was still sometimes asked to provide security at events. Olga Gorelik recalls, he made a very kind, gentle impression. I knew he had done time, that he was a leftist, but he was so soft spoken and modest. I felt completely safe when he came to guard us. Many of his comrades had moved on into journalism, science, business, but Sokrat hadn't. Or maybe he never wanted that kind of life. With his criminal record, he couldn't get a civil job anyway. The job market shrunk after his prison time, and that was hard for him, but he stayed positive. Lately, he worked with a construction crew he put together. They built installations for exhibitions, including contemporary art. But when the COVID 19 pandemic hit, exhibitions stopped. They ended up working at military training ground in Alabama, setting up structures for the Army 2020 forum. I think it went against his ideals, but it wasn't about that. They just needed money, his friend said. Despite everything, he stayed active publicly. Most anti-fascists kept a low profile due to repression, but after two prison terms, Alexei didn't care anymore. He spoke whenever he could and became a sort of a public figure. In May 2020, his book, Dialogues About Prison, was published, mostly recounting his experiences from the second prison term. He wrote, in Russia, you end up in prison eventually, especially with the kind of life and activities I chose. His editor, Irina, said he planned a follow up book, not about prison, but was too restless, always busy with people and projects. Even during editing sessions, he struggled to concentrate. One of the last things he told me, a friend recalled, was that he wanted to go to Minsk, Belarus, and join the protests against President Lukashenko. He still sometimes got into street fights, not weekly, said a friend, but it happened. We kept telling him, enough already. You've done time twice for this. You're nearly 35 years old. Another friend said Sokrat had tried to settle down but still wore classic skinhead clothes, which often provoked conflicts. I think he never stopped being who he was, anti-fascist, Rush skinhead. Maybe that's what led to the fight that killed him and its brutality. The fight happened near Baumanskaya metro station. He had been drinking with friends. One of them had a conflict with a female cashier at a grocery store, possibly over attempted theft. Sakrat had stayed outside. The cashier reportedly called her Chechen husband. About 90 minutes later, he and three others arrived. They fought, but without serious injuries. Then, 2 hours later, the four men returned and attacked Sokrat again. Police said it was a five-person fight. He was knocked down, got up, said something, and they attacked him again. He hit his head. He had 3 skull fractures, one likely from hitting the asphalt, the other 2 from blows. The attackers got scared, put a shot under his head, and left. He was someone who had seen a lot more than your average Facebook user, and more than I have, said his friend Billy Kovich. Yet he always remained cheerful, calm, not bitter. He went through a lot, and we thought he'd make it through this too. He was, after all, a big, strong guy. Rest in peace, the legend Sokrat.